if you've watched my channel before, you know that I cover influencers. I've reported on the influencer industry for literally 15 years. I wrote an entire book on it. It's behind me, extremely online, about the rise of the content creator industry. And I'm extremely against these laws that are claimed to protect child influencers. And when I say that, a lot of people get mad because they're like, oh, how could you be against the law protecting child influencers? Well, these laws don't protect child influencers. That's not what they do. They're essentially like really, I mean, at best, they're completely ineffective. And at worst, they're harmful and dangerous and actually like exploit the children even more. So I'm against them. And, we've seen a few of them pass in certain states like Washington, Utah, California. I think Missouri was one. There's been a few states that have passed these laws. And listen, these state legislators love these laws because they're like, oh, protecting child influencers. Oh, the evil mommy bloggers are making their, children on vlogs and that's bad or whatever. And it's like, yeah, first of all, you don't have to be an influencer to expose your children's privacy online, which is actually some of the most egregious examples of adults violating their children's privacy online, like mothers oversharing on Facebook or oversharing in certain Facebook groups. They're not influencers. They're just parents that are oversharing about their kids online, which is bad. So the idea that like only influencers are like harming children by talking about them online is just very silly. That said, you know, children that are featured heavily in content like deserve to be compensated. Now, they are compensated to be clear. Like they are, like that's generally how like labor laws work. We already have child labor laws on the books and actually the Coogan Act, which designates a lot of rules for child performers, which already covers a lot of sort of activity. But these laws, are things that again these state senators and lawmakers want to pass because they want to seem like they care about the children and they don't understand how the influencer industry works. So just this week, we now have Colorado jumping in, trying to pass one of these laws. They have this bill called HB 261058. So I guess HB 1058 because 26 is for 26. And we have these state representatives, or yeah, I guess a senator. Whatever. They have these lawmakers who want to pass this law. It's protections for minors featured in digital content. It's a bad law. Okay, this law is effectively is really similar to the Utah law, but it's actually even worse because the threshold is even lower. So instead of like it was like $100,000 or something, I think you had to make before you had to worry about these restrictions in Utah. I can't remember if it was 100. It was some higher number, or maybe it was 60,000. I think this is just 15,000, which is not that. It's like, I mean, listen, 15,000 is not nothing. That's like my rent for many months, but it's also not that much money. It's not like these people are making like hundreds of millions of dollars. You know what I mean? So if you make $15,000 from your online content and you're a content creator, you have to, basically do all this stuff with the minor to make sure that the minor is paid. Um, it's it's very messy. It's very messy. It's not well thought out. I don't think they don't really understand how the content creator industry works. I mean, just case in point here, they try to say like the number, like, they have to meet this criteria. The content has to make $15,000. The content creator has to make at least $15,000. The number of views in the online content meets the online hosting platform's compensation threshold, or the content creator receives 10 cents or more per view. What? Like they're just making up these arbitrary numbers. This is bad for many reasons. So let me break down. If you haven't seen it before, I wrote a really long takedown on Utah's law, and I spoke to tons of experts about it. This is a 7,000 word investigation into this law. This literally took me so long. I only lost subscribers to my Substack when I published this. I literally like published this. This took me weeks to go through this law, and I spent so much time, like hours on the phone with legal experts tearing apart these laws and trying to explain why they're bad. And then like I publish it and people are like, unsubscribe, who wants this? But we'll talk about it in a sec. So you know, and maybe we'll just watch the video that I made. That might be faster. But they don't. Oh yeah, it was $150,000. They kind of. Well, let's actually watch the video because I kind of get into it more here. Sorry to be like, do you want to watch me live stream me watching my own video? But like, I think maybe we don't have to watch the whole thing, but I think I just like explain it kind of succinctly. Also, I made this a while ago. Don't judge my hideous thumbnail. Okay. Also, I don't know how I don't know if the sound sounds okay. Sorry if it's like really loud when I'm watching the videos. I don't know how to like fix that, but okay. Recently, Utah became the latest state to pass a major law claiming to, quote, protect child influencers. HB 322 was signed into law by Governor Spencer Cox on March 25th. It was celebrated across the internet with breathless coverage in the media and on TikTok.
Utah law has established protections for the children of online content creators.
Utah has passed a new law aimed at protecting child influencers.
In Utah, a far-reaching measure to protect the children of online influencers is now the law of the land.
Here's the problem. The law doesn't protect child influencers. In fact, child welfare experts believe it could lead to even more harm and abuse and even less accountability for parenting bloggers. The law, which I don't think 99% of people covering this landmark legislation even bothered to read, which by the way, I talked to somebody who testified. Also, look at how frizzy my hair was in that video. I was like, it's like, I talked to an expert that testified for the law. Multiple experts, actually multiple, I'm thinking of two. One testified for the Washington law as well. These people were called in front of these state legislatures to testify for these laws. They had not read the law and they didn't have any idea what was in the law. They just wanted to seem like they're protecting children online, protecting child content, okay? Oh, I also called the state legislature. Oh my God, I forgot about this too. I called the lawmaker in Utah who co-sponsored the law. And I was like, this law is bad. And also like, did you know this is in it? Did you know this won't work? Did you know this problem, this problem, this problem? He goes, yeah, I can't like comment on any of that. Sorry. Like he didn't even know what I was talking about. He didn't even know what was in the law. He was like, you can call a lawyer and like they can answer any questions. I don't basically know how to answer because I don't know enough about, what's in the law. And I'm like, you don't know enough about what's in the law that you sponsored? And then I found out basically this like 26-year-old like Mormon right-wing like guy is like the one that actually like wrote the law. But anyway, so we'll continue. Is deeply flawed, counterproductive, and dangerously irresponsible. It violates core free speech principles, provides avenues for further child exploitation, and utterly fails its stated mission of protecting children. The law gives abusive parents even more power over their kids' finances. It makes it harder for journalists and commentators to call out wrongdoing in the family vlogging world. And most importantly, it sets a terrifying and dangerous legal precedent to dismantle free speech protections, something not a single journalist who has covered this story even bothered to mention in their articles. For those who aren't deep in the tech policy world, I can understand how you wouldn't immediately realize these things. The media coverage of all of these child influencer laws has been atrocious. And that's in part because stories about these state legislative efforts have been primarily covered by breaking news reporters and commentary people. These reporters are not only ignorant about how the influencer business works, but they're also completely uneducated about the broader political efforts to dismantle free speech protections in America right now. These are not tech policy reporters. They get a story assigned, they write it up wholly uncritically, print some quotes from some concerned parents, and call it a day. TikTokers, YouTubers, and online commentators then take those headlines and repackage them into moral panic engagement bait. Joe Piazza, a journalist covering the influencer industry, told me, quote, no one is even reading these articles, much less a law. People are taking what they want from headlines and then they start sharing it. So before you share another headline about how amazing it is that Utah or whatever other state passed a law protecting child influencers, let me explain to you what these laws actually do and why they're actually being passed. Because I can promise you, none of this is actually about protecting children. Before we get into the history and motivation, sorry, I'm listening to my own video like, yes, so right. And I'm like, I made it, I wrote it. Behind these coordinated legal efforts in states like Utah and the ways these laws are used to dismantle free speech, I want to break down some of the most basic problems with the law as it applies to child influencers. If you read the mainstream media coverage or listen to most people on TikTok and YouTube, you'll probably hear them explain the law this way. They'll say that it mandates parents who make more than $150,000 And so just, yeah, this is $150,000. Mind you that the Colorado one is $15,000. So all these problems that are discussed in this video could potentially affect this. We can dig into the Colorado like more details, but I just want you guys to understand like the broad-based issues with these laws, because a lot of these laws they vary slightly by state, and I have to look a little bit deeper too into like some of the other provisions in Colorado, but spiritually they're all the same. Okay. Dollars a year by producing content featuring their children will be forced to set aside 15% of their earnings into a trust that the kid can access when they turn 18. Once a child turns 18, that minor can also petition a court to require that the content creator be forced to delete or edit any social media content that they were featured in as a minor. This all seems reasonable, right? It's not. Because not only does that last part of the law endanger the free speech of journalists and activists, which I'll get into later, the way people are describing what this law does is so wildly out of step with what the law actually says. I've been reporting on these child influencer legal efforts since the beginning for outlets including the New York Times and the Washington Post. And for this video, I spoke to half a dozen top tech policy experts, some of the best free speech lawyers in the country, well-known child safety advocates with decades of experience, and managers who actually work with child influencers. So to start, let's establish some facts. Number one, nowhere in this law does it specify that these new regulations only apply to mommy vloggers, family influencers, or even just parents. Nowhere. News articles, TikToks, YouTube videos claiming this literally just made that detail up whole cloth. In fact, the law is written so incredibly broadly, it doesn't just apply to parents. It applies to all content creators in the state. And it defines content creator as, quote, any individual who produces social media content. This means that the law is not just regulating family vloggers. It's regulating masses of social media content creators, including journalists, activists, and teenagers themselves who are making and monetizing their own content. While the law does state that the creator has to make at least $150,000 to trigger trust and compensation requirements, this threshold doesn't actually narrow things much at all. As anyone who works in the content creator industry knows, income fluctuates wildly year to year. Many content creators, especially if they're growing, don't even know how much they'll make next year. Say a TikToker made $60,000 last year through a patchwork of platform monetization offerings. This next year, they have some viral success. Well, they better start keeping meticulous records and complying preemptively with this law, because if they happen to hit that $150,000 threshold, they'll be liable. And while this monetary threshold appears to narrow the law's scope, it leaves critical problems unresolved. For instance, because of the broad way content creator is defined in this law, these regulations could apply to investigative journalists covering high-profile issues regularly involving minors. For instance, protests, crime reporting, high-profile court cases involving minors, and so on. The law could restrict documentary producers and commentary channels who monetize through platforms like Patreon and YouTube. Don't you dare try to make a documentary that covers a story involving youth exploitation or social movements involving minors, or you could find yourself in major legal hot water. A huge reason we even know about the wrongdoing in the family vlogging world or the troubled teen industry is thanks to T channels and accountability-focused creators. Well, they're subject to this law now too. This brings me to the second problem with the law. The law treats all children with an online presence as if they're exploited. I don't want to like make everyone just rewatch my entire video. You can watch it on my main page, because I know I'm like, okay, I'm just making everyone watch my video on a live stream and watching the video. But basically, like, those are some of the main problems with these types of laws. They don't really protect children is the problem. They're not about protecting children. It's mostly about censorship of content, restricting content. I think they're well-meaning, but there's no like industry. I mean, this is something that I've thought about a lot too. There is no industry, trade group, lobbying organization, nothing for the content creator industry, like nothing, or really independent journalists. We have these like freedom of the press organizations that sometimes try to fight these laws if big tech companies get involved with them, but big tech companies aren't involved with them because these laws don't regulate big tech, they regulate the users of the app. So these regulations only apply to users of YouTube. It doesn't apply that, it doesn't have YouTube doing anything to curb family channels or anything like that. It just regulates like the actual speech of the people. And in fact, a lot of children. There's this idea that's sort of implicit in a lot of these laws that children are being exploited all day online. And sure, I mean, some children are, but the broader issue is that like a lot of teenagers also have their own social media platforms, build their own platforms. I mean, think of somebody like Greta Thunberg or any of these other activists. Like there's so many young climate activists, activists in different areas that have grown an audience when they're in high school online. Not to mention stars like Charlie D'Amelio or like, some of these other Addison Rae, some of these other social media stars that blew up when they were teenagers as well. Under these laws, they would often have to give money to their parents. Like their parents could have like 85% of their income because of these weird revenue splits that are mandated. It basically treats it as it removes the agency from children completely. And that's a huge problem because kids deserve the right to express themselves online. And I think, the bigger part too is like, what is a content creator? There is no real definition of a content creator. A content creator is kind of like anybody that's posting on social media, maybe monetizing. And so, these laws are like, we're going to regulate, family vloggers, but then they're written in a way that could regulate independent journalists on YouTube or Patreon. So there's just so many problems with these laws, and not to mention the financial structure of like the Utah law actually allows for more financial abuse from parents. Like it's like the parents are the ones abusing with them, but then it mandates that the parents like control a trust for the child. And it's like, okay, wait a second, but you just like this whole law is written as if like these parents are abusive, but then you want to mandate that they are the ones that must control the trust, meaning that you're mandating that they potentially could like have even more authority to abuse their children. So it just like they're very poorly thought out, and they're spreading because these lawmakers in these different states want to like do something. But it's like if you wanted to do something to actually protect children, again, you guys don't care about protecting children, let's be real. But there is a lot of exploitation in the content creator industry generally. What could you do to fix that? Well, you could provide some basic services. For instance, content creators can't get healthcare, like adult content creators. A lot of these family vloggers, not a lot, some family vloggers I've spoken to don't even really have comprehensive healthcare because they're basically independent, like content creators, and then they have kids, and then the kids aren't covered in healthcare. It's just like it's a disaster. So I think just some basic services would be really good for freelancers generally in America, basically increasing the social safety net. And then I think the other issue is that like the way revenue deals work, like these laws treat it as if the majority of the money that family content creators, which like they're obsessed with family content creators, which is like there's like 2,000 big family content creators in all of America. And they're writing these laws to regulate massive amounts of like independent journalists, and they're just ignoring that. But like regardless, the way that a lot of these adult parenting content creators make a living is through brand partnerships. But none of like these laws, at least the ones that I've seen in Utah, Utah, California, Washington, et cetera, they only regulate the money that's made from like platforms like YouTube or TikTok, like the TikTok Creator Fund. You have to give, 30% of your earnings from the TikTok Creator Fund. It's like, okay, that's great. But, really this company just made $3 million with like a Charmin partnership or something. Like they're making their money from SpawnCon. But you can't regulate SpawnCon deals because then you're just regulating advertising. So it's like, I just think they need to like, our entire media ecosystem has been reoriented around online media. And outside of censorship and surveillance laws, they're not passing any sort of labor protections. Like they're not doing anything to ensure that the content creator industry is more transparent, more ethical, more, better for people that are exploited. Because the reality is too, and I say this at the end of this video, when we talk about exploitation online or embarrassment online, like I think we need more norms around privacy. Ironically, these same these same lawmakers want to strip privacy from the internet again and have mass surveillance. But children are not the only ones that are exploited. Like a mom it's always the mom, so they hate the moms. Never mind, there's tons of family vlogs are usually a mom and a dad, and somehow nobody cares about the dads. But whatever, parents that are like monetizing their kids online, which again is not very many, the parenting vloggers are such a tiny sliver of the overall content creator industry. Okay, so we're going to like make it so that like those kids get protections, but what about the kindness influencer, burgeoning ecosystem, which actually has a lot that Mr. Beast has like kind of spun out? Like they go around filming like homeless people, right? And like using them and exploiting them for content. Or what about these kick streamers that are going around, harassing random people on the street? Now, listen, I actually think this is the reason why like speech laws we shouldn't try to like we don't know who has consented to be in the video. You don't know who's in on the joke. You don't know how they feel about it. This is why these laws restricting speech are just a lose-lose all the time. I think if we had better protections in place and we had stronger norms around filming in public and things like that, that's the way to go to fix these systems. But, these silly laws that they claim, protections for minors featured in digital content, like minors are putting themselves in digital content. If you want to be being an influencer is like the number one career goal for a lot of Gen Z. And these laws don't take that into account. These laws act like every kid that is put on the internet by themselves often is being like, taken advantage of. And we have to like, restrict their speech, restrict their platform, not let them have a voice online. It just feeds into everything else that I've been talking about of like restricting speech and, pushing mass surveillance. So it bothers me that this is happening in Colorado. And I was thinking of writing them as a constituent and like sending them my like, 10,000 word screed or whatever and being like, but I think, no, I think I might just like write to them in like a nice way and be like, wait, what am I doing? How do I make this? I'm like so bad at this. Yeah, here removes child influencers agency. I was thinking of trying to like write them in a nice way maybe and being like, "Hey, I'm an expert in these laws. Like I'd love to help you make these laws stronger." Like wait, somebody told me today like the really good phrase to use when you're trying to tell a lawmaker that their law sucks. Um and it was like you tell them like, "I want to help strengthen the law," or something. Basically, there's a way to say it that makes it sound like you want to help them, but then you go in and then you basically are like, "Your law is shit, and here's what you need to do." But I might just try to like reach out and be like, I live in California, but I am from Colorado. My family's all in Colorado, and I cover the content creator industry, so whatever. I also think it's kind of notable, I will say, that I'm never asked to testify for any of these types of laws. I am the only one that has written an entire book on the history of the content creator industry. I have covered the content creator industry longer than any other journalist, any other mainstream working journalist today. Like I am the main journalist that covers this industry. I've never been asked to testify for one law because they know that I'm going to tear them apart. And instead they want to get these like rubes that don't actually know anything and that they can just like testify because they want to testify for clout. They want to get clout by being like, "Look, I testified for the law." And it's like, yeah, the law that you didn't even read, that you don't even understand. But, you want to seem cool. So it's just very silly. Somebody said, "How would I write a law that protects minors in content?" What do you mean by protects minors in content? Like, this is what I'm talking about. The majority of kids that are like embarrassed or exploited online are not, that's their parents doing that. Like, for instance, there was this huge Facebook group years ago that was like tens of thousands of parents about adopted children. And I think it was like they wanted to rehome the adopted children. But basically, parents were logging onto this Facebook group, sharing highly detailed personal medical psychiatric history about their adopted children, like shitting on their adopted children, posting pictures, posting videos like of their meltdowns, all this stuff. Like essentially de facto, like not completely publicly, it was a Facebook group, but like it was stuff spread out of the group, obviously, and like ended up really affecting these kids. Or like, one of the girls that they constantly have testifying for these laws, what happened to her is horrible, but her mom basically just embarrassed her a lot on Facebook by posting pictures of her a lot on Facebook when she was a child. That's embarrassing. That's not cool. Unfortunately, you're not, and you guys are family vlogging channels are a cancer. Why? Why? Why are they a cancer? Plenty of people make family content and it's totally fine. Like I've spoken to so many kids that grow up in these environments. A lot of them become content creators themselves. Like this idea that like, oh, they're all exploited. Like it's just not the reality. And so, a lot of kids that are, the majority of kids being like embarrassed online or having videos of themselves that are like viral, that are like mortifying or like it makes them unhappy. The parents are not influencers. The parents are just normal parents that put their kids online. So if you want to know what we should do to fix this problem, we need to start centering privacy. We need to make it socially unacceptable to post photos. And by the way, we've seen a lot of strides in this. For instance, it used to be totally normal to post an Instagram photo of your child when you were born. Now there's the norm of like putting an emoji in front of their face and stuff, right? Like these types of things make a difference. Like we want parents to understand, hey, by the way, facial recognition, like these social networks are training your photos for facial recognition for with AI, all this other stuff. Don't post photos of your children. Let them, sort of set themselves up. Like let your child define their own kind of content online. And you guys are saying so many family vlogging channels are exploitative. What are you guys basing that off of? What are you basing that off of? Because you're lecturing somebody that actually covers that industry. And you're making these comments based on moral panic slop that you guys have consumed. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, there are a lot of people, it's like most of the family channels, and I'm not talking about the most, yes, are there egregious, terrible ones that are awful? Yes. But I report on this industry. Like, those channels are some of the most regulated, scrutinized channels. Those are and yes, can you find anecdotes of kids again that are like, oh, I'm so mad that like I was featured in these YouTube videos? Yes, but the thing is, again, the majority of embarrassing content is most people's parents are not content creators, and most people's parents are still putting way too much of their children on the internet. Or sorry, most of these kids' parents are putting way too much of their kids on the internet. So it's just like, I just think that it's a bigger problem. And, if you cannot make it a crime, like we don't want to create a thing where it's like, oh, it's a crime to embarrass your child online. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like it is bad. We should encourage parents to center privacy. But again, that means centering privacy in these conversations, changing norms, encouraging these tech platforms to enact privacy tools. For instance, auto blurring of faces. Like I wish I could like go on my Instagram and just click like auto blur everyone's faces except mine or something, or you know what I mean? Or like giving more tools to like when you're uploading a photo, being like, do you want to, here's some black squares, you can put them over people, or here's some emojis, do you want to put them over people's faces? Like there are ways that these platforms could center privacy and encourage privacy. But they don't do that because that's not the point of those are not the things that are being censored. Instead, we have this like freak out where people are like, oh, evil mommy bloggers. And, sorry, I know I'm just getting madder and madder throughout my stream. And then it's actually kind of waking me up. But I was going to go to sleep or I was going to, I can't speak. I was going to log off. And then I started talking about laws that make me mad. But anyway, I just think that the way that a lot of these laws are written is really sloppy. And what these laws need to understand is that the majority of content creators are not family channels, and that there are significantly more teenage influencers than there are family channels. Family channels there's not that many family channels on the internet. It's a genre of content, but there's significantly more teenage content. So, you want to preserve the autonomy of teenagers to be able to express themselves online. Not a lot of these people, of course, they want to keep teenagers off the internet, but that's why I'm saying I think it's really important. Somebody said, is this the same kind of thing with parents and their child actors? Not really, because like child actors, it's very different. Like there's very clearly defined roles, but if you have a family channel, you have a Coogan account likely for your child, especially if you're with any sort of legitimate management or talent agency. So, and yeah, as somebody said, I think this person, Gem Ruby, made such a good point because parents caring about their kids' privacy would mean that they'd have to recognize their kids' humanity. And I think that's the cultural issue. In the US, we treat kids like property, not people. That is the key thing here. That is the key thing. It is treating children as property and not as people. And I think that is exactly the problem. And that's what we need to fix, because I hear you on like, I understand like the outrage when people see these like, just like there's a lot of like Mormon, like, family channels that I'm like, okay, this is like, who knows how ballerina farms, sorry, I keep shaking the camera, how ballerina farms, kids will feel about growing up in content. But a lot of it is cultural too, right? Like a lot of it is very cultural, and Mormons especially like really push this idea of like setting up. I mean, this is why Mormons have always played like a really crucial role in the sort of like the social media influencer ecosystem. Like they were very early adopters. They really they want a lot of children grow up and then become influencers themselves. So like it's all about spreading their faith and all this stuff. So I think there's a lot of like cultural things, to discuss. But overall, what I tell every parent is just keep your kid offline. Don't even post pictures of them online. Don't post videos of them. If you think there's a funny video or photo, send it to your family group chat, and tell them not to share it, or make a private, photo reel on or photo album on Apple Photos or something. That's fine. And in terms of protecting these kids that are working, stronger labor laws across the board, stronger labor protections across the board. Like that would fix so many issues, not just among child labor, but like everywhere. Because the reality is a lot of these like child influencers that are like working for their parents, it's kind of like having like a local store and having your child work for the store or whatever. Like we want labor laws, we want labor protections, but trying to focus on like regulating family vloggers is stupid. We should just have labor protections for children. We should have child labor laws for children. And by the way, some of the same places passing, the same lawmakers pushing all this, oh, we have to protect the children of the family vloggers. They're like at the same time, these reactionary politicians are also seeking to dismantle labor protections and allow like 13-year-olds to work in like the meat factory. So it's like, okay, so a 13-year-old, you can't set up a YouTube account and like, again, with parental consent, like make some content and you start a gaming controller review channel like Timothy Chalamet or whatever, but then they can go work in the meat factory? No. Ideally, we would want to have children not work at all. Honestly, like I wish that they didn't have to work. I wish we had an economy where children could just focus on being children and learning and stuff. But I just think there's a lot to fix before, passing these stupid ill-advised laws. So that's my problem. So anyway, I wrote this manifesto and it's on my Substack. You can find it. I posted it last year, but new laws protecting child influencers are bad and dangerous. You can read the whole thing if you pay to subscribe to my Substack. It's usermag.co. And yeah, or you can support me on Patreon. I'll probably repost this entire essay on Patreon as well, and I'll peg it to the Colorado law just so people can read it on Patreon as well. Or you can just go to my video and watch. You can just watch the video. Says a lot of the same stuff. It's called "These Child Influencer Laws Are Bad or Dangerous." It was 9 months ago. It's on my main feed. So if you feel like diving in to some bad policy, I go into a lot of detail in those videos and in my video and in my piece. And actually my piece has even more quotes from actual regulators and lawyers and child safety experts that are like, by the way, a lot of these financial structures are going to let people, censor parents, censor or abuse their kids even more. So yeah. So one more thing really quickly that makes me mad about these people. Because again, these people making content about the child influencer world that's outrage content are also exploiting the children. So TikTok had this kids influencer house called the Sweet Sisterhood. And do I think it's great that children, want to commodify themselves and live in a content house? No, but kids also want to be in the entertainment industry. Kids for years, like they look up, they want to be influencers. I'm not blaming these like 7-year-olds for wanting to like recreate the hype house or whatever, because they're children and maybe their parents let them have a glorified sleepover and do that. But it's like these YouTubers are then using those same children to make outrage bait. And that outrage bait lets people that wouldn't watch the family content or the child content consume content about those children, featuring those children, that's just outrage bait about them. And then they can feel moral and smug. Like, oh yeah, aren't these are so terrible. And it's like, yeah, okay, so it's two sides of the same coin. Because like you're participating, you're just watching outrage bait to feel morally superior to the type of people that would watch content about the child influencer accounts, which is, by the way, mostly other children. And I wish that they would actually critique the problem at hand, which is capitalism. I'm sorry to say it. Maybe there's some capitalism fans in the chat, but like, the fact, like, I write about this in my book, Extremely Online, but like literally commodifying your life, which is what a lot of these like lifestyle influencers and child, like that is sort of like the end point of capitalism, is like you have commodified absolutely everything that you are now commodifying, like your actual, like your very life, your friendships, your like your personal life, your social life, like all of that. That is what That is what, like, capitalism is pushing you to do, is to, like, commodify all of that for profit. That's the problem, like, why don't we talk about those systems? But no, it's so much easier to just make, like, I'm not hating on this girl too, I like her videos, but, like, it's just I just think that it's really easy to make this type of kinda, like, outrage slop about the kid influencer world.